Definitely when I told my parents, I was like, oh, I'm going to go start a cannabis company. They're like, are you kidding me? You finished an MBA and that's the first thing you go do? You don't start a conversation being like, oh, I work for a cannabis company. And like give you a side look now. They're, oh, like, tell me more about it.
Cannabis legalization is like the biggest public policy experiment that we've seen in our lifetime, and it's made up of all these like discrete little experiments with individual consumers taking individual doses of cannabis.
Welcome to We Are Alberta, where we tell stories of real Albertans through an economic lens. My name is Nick Ford. This episode features a story about an Edmonton cannabis company called Token Naturals. While many large-scale cannabis companies operating in Alberta are focusing on the production and cultivation of cannabis plants, Token's purpose is a little different. They want to create a line of cannabis-infused oils and cannabis beverages for consumers to enjoy. In June, Parliament voted to change Canadian law by lifting a 95-year-old ban on cannabis. The ruling, which will come into effect in the middle of October, is set to free millions of adults to openly smoke, ingest, or grow cannabis without fear of being criminally prosecuted. This is big news. It's big news because Canada is the second country worldwide to legalize the drug's recreational use. While some U.S. states like California and Colorado have permitted the use and sale of cannabis, Uruguay was actually the first country to legalize the sale for recreational use in December of 2013. But legalization is also big news because it has huge economic potential for the country and Alberta. Since Canada is the second country to legalize cannabis, the world is focusing on us.
The world's focus is on Canada right now, and with that, like, you're going to see tourism, you're going to see the benefits of, a whole new industry, diversification in the Alberta market and the city.
That's Keenan Pascale, Token Naturals co-founder and CEO. It's his job to manage Token's team, build and strengthen relationships, and ensure that his investors stay happy. He started a career in banking a number of years ago, but got the opportunity to get his MBA at the University of British Columbia. There he met his co-founder Cam O'Neill. They didn't know it yet, but Cam was the one with the cannabis company idea originally. Here's Keenan on how and where Token Naturals came to life.
So we had a innovation class through the school, and I didn't actually join Cam's team at the time.
Here's Cam.
The class that Keenan mentioned, it was called Tech Entrepreneurship. A really great professor at UBC's solder school, Paul Cubbin, he's the one who heads it. So he brings together MBA students and pairs them with engineering students, technical students, and then you go off and you spend like 2 terms starting a business. The start of that class was a mixer. So it was like a cocktail mixer where everybody in the class gets together and you kind of just smash heads together and meet each other and decide who you want to start a business with. So we had these signs all over the room for like health tech, fintech, robotics, whatever, and I just wrote my own sign that said cannabis and stuck it to the wall and waited for people to come.
And how many people came?
You know what? It was pretty slim picking.
Definitely when I told my parents, I was like, oh, I'm going to go start a cannabis company. They're like, are you kidding me? You finished an MBA and that's the first thing you go do? You don't start a conversation being like, oh, I work for a cannabis company, and like give you a side look now. They're, oh, like, tell me more about it.
Cam, Token Naturals' Chief Innovation Officer, graduated as a chemical engineer originally. That career track led him to be a coal miner in the Rockies for a number of years, but he got sick of working as an engineer. When you think about Alberta's economy, you think of oil, and when Cam came to Alberta looking for work, he interviewed with petroleum oil companies. And his focus remained on oils too. At UBC in that tech entrepreneurship class, Cam created a Keurig machine to extract cannabis oil, which was the spark he needed to get Token off and running.
The reason I brought up the class is because the class is based on lean startup methodologies. It's like Steve Blank. So that whole thing is about creating a minimally viable product and then going and testing that on your consumers. So we created our MVP, minimally viable product, by just taking like old espresso machines that we got from the Salvation Army and then just like pulling parts off and retrofitting them and running different solvents through a bed of like a cup of raw cannabis. So
And did it work?
it worked. Yeah. I mean, like, it's just basically like it's just a more efficient way to do what you do with a pot on the stove when you're making extractions at home. So
as Cam and Keenan were pitching the idea around, they realized potential investors were more intrigued by the product, the oil, rather than the Keurig-like device. So they switched up their focus to the cannabis oils and started shopping around for some investors. It's good they did this too. There are a lot of players in the Canadian cannabis industry already, and plenty of them are choosing production and cultivation. Articles from Brightfield and Bloomberg show that the edibles and consumables market far exceed that of flower. Molson and Coors are also said to be in talks with weed companies about cannabis-infused beverages. The first hurdle they needed to overcome to start their oil and drink business was to obtain a federal license. That move actually helped them get to Alberta. Here's Keenan.
So we started shopping around. I was like, hey, we can talk to guys in Vancouver, BC. There's already a lot of players in that space. So we were looking at a company, because Cam's originally from Nova Scotia. So there was a guy who had an almost completed license for sale. So I flew out to Antigonish, Nova Scotia. Never been out to the East Coast. I personally wanted to get back to Alberta. And then at the same time, so it became Vancouver or Antigonish or Edmonton. So we were looking at the different numbers and seeing what we could do. And just the market here was more poised for a cannabis company, and I had a strong network of, our investors were here, the real estate we were able to shop around with was here, the support from even like the city of Edmonton and the Alberta government, like that, we had the network here. Going out to Nova Scotia was more like a long shot in the dark. That deal ended up falling through anyways, which is kind of a blessing in disguise. So we were like, you know what, let's just start everything in Alberta, start it from scratch. We'll do our own license from point A to point Z, and we'll see what we can produce in Alberta.
There's no denying that the economics of the industry also attracted Keenan and Cam to set up Token here. Statistics Canada data on cannabis notes that the highest per capita usage of cannabis in 2017 was in Nova Scotia at 27.1 grams per person per year. British Columbia was second at 24.6 grams per capita, and Alberta was not far off at 24.1 grams. For Token, this is particularly interesting given that they were debating whether or not to set up shop in these three provinces. When measured in dollars spent per person per year, Alberta ranked second in dollars spent per capita on cannabis at $181 per person per year. Nova Scotia had the highest spending per person per year at $204 in 2017. Cannabis prices in Alberta and Nova Scotia were slightly higher than the national average last year. However, the higher dollars spent in the two provinces were the result of higher usage and not pricing. Even though Albertans spend more on cannabis than in other provinces, there are other benefits to operating a cannabis company here in the province. Here's Cam.
there's a lot of benefits to the Alberta market. There's a lot of benefits to being in Alberta that don't even include the market, which we can talk about as well. But like the Alberta market is a really ideal place to incubate a new business and a new brand, I think, because we got these two cities that are, you know, they could be any town, any city, North America kind of thing, right? Like they're 3 hours apart, 1 million people. The market is perfect. I think that's why a lot of like restaurant brands come out of Alberta. It's just it's a really representative market. And there is that high disposable income, which is great. It's really good for a base of investors as well, because there's a lot of wealth in this province that really likes to support local initiatives. So.
Yeah. Are there any other reasons why you guys I mean, you obviously have your network here.
Yeah.
Other economic reasons that maybe aren't so obvious.
The regulatory landscape in Alberta, like I think it's probably fairly well accepted that Alberta is sort of a more like laissez-faire economy. Like the regulations are pretty. It's actually like you can look at research that shows that like the cost of starting a business in Alberta is like very competitive across Canada, and we had a hunch that the Alberta government would implement like kind of sensible policies that would be clear, and that came to pass.
Unlike other provinces where the distribution and sale of cannabis will be undertaken by government at the provincial level, cannabis distribution in Alberta will be carried out by the private sector, much like Alberta's liquor industry. To start, this has encouraged the opening of nearly 300 dispensaries across the province and will certainly boost investment in building, construction, and most importantly, employment. The establishment of a legal industry will create jobs related to growing, marketing, retailing, regulating, and transporting and warehousing cannabis products and services.
Yeah, I think the privatization was a big decision. So we are looking at setting up shop because for Token, the recreational market's kind of a larger focus for us. So as we were deciding, okay, where is going to be the best place to open a dispensary in Canada? And we're like, if you look at the liquor stores, Alberta, they privatized it. There's all these opportunities. You're going to see companies come and go. You're going to see successes, but you're going to see the pie grow. So we were looking at that, and we kind of modeled our decision on, okay, our shelf space, we're going to have the most access in Alberta.
But before Token can sell products off their shelves, they have had and continue to have to jump through some hoops in order to legitimize their company before legalization. Remember, cannabis isn't legal until October. It's a long and sometimes frustrating process for Keenan and Cam. Originally, they had trouble finding a bank that would finance them. They had trouble finding a lawyer and accountants. The background check phase was also lengthy and frustrating. They needed to make money, so they ended up pivoting.
So what we did, we had this downtime. So we got the application in. At this point, the team was 3 people. And we're like, okay, it would be nice to show investors that we can get products on the shelves. We can learn logistics of shipping and developing products. And Cam was also interested in the flavor profiles and extraction. So we were looking, kind of brainstorming at, okay, what's an adult-focused product that would get people used to our brand and get people used to dropping a tincture and oil or something into their beverage. So Cam came up with the idea of Token Bitters, and then we pitched that to our investors, and a handful of them were like, you guys are idiots. No way. Are you guys going to make a bitters company? What's the point? And we're like, no, we'll just chop. So we took about 10 grand, and we're like, okay, let's just start this bitters line. So we made an orange, a cherry, and a lavender. And then being from Edmonton, we named all our flavors after neighborhoods. So we have white lavender, Strathcona orange, and Richie cherry. And then we have new flavors and Linwood and so we expanded the flavors to 8, but these 3 flavors took off because Albertans again support Albertans. So when we were going to restaurants and liquor stores, we're like, hey, it's an Edmonton-based company, and they're like, oh sweet, let's just throw out these Angostura bitters. And that bitters line went from just a little idea in Cam's head, and we started kind of in my garage, to we're in 40 some stores. We're in liquor stores in North America, which has turned to Alacana. We just actually locked down a importer in Japan. So through EDC, we got some support, went to Japan, did a bunch of pitches. So now we got a bitters line that's turned into its own little beast.
Yeah, well, it's a really good platform to develop products off of. So it's done some good things like revenue, and it's got our name out there. It's built some brand recognition. But fundamentally, from a scientific perspective, the way I look at it is, it's not too dissimilar from the product we'll create with cannabis. We're using a natural solvent to extract natural compounds from plants. So that's what we're going to be doing with cannabis as well. And the bitter thing, hopefully we can add those bitter components to the cannabis products as well, because it has this extra benefit of being a natural repellent for children, because kids don't like bitter tastes.
Legalization and the development of a whole new industry above ground means that there are jobs and money to be made. Statistics Canada reports that in 2017, 5 million Canadians aged 15 to 64 spent close to $6 billion on cannabis for medical and non-medical purposes. This works out to around $1,200 per consumer. In the short term, the retail market could even hit $9 billion, and by some estimates, the Canadian marijuana industry could be as big as $20 billion in the long term. That's significant money and about 4 times larger than PEI's whole provincial economy in 2017. At 36.7 years of age, Alberta has the youngest median age of any province in Canada. Alberta also has the largest share of people in their working years relative to their population. What's more is that the province also holds the number 2 spot for cannabis consumption and spending per capita. A younger population rate and a high consumption do go hand in hand, which means there's no doubt that Alberta's retail sector will benefit from the legalization of cannabis. I took an adventure with Keenan and Cam out of the studio to their potential downtown dispensary location in Edmonton. We chatted more about what Token wants to do with cannabis dispensaries in the province. We went up Jasper Ave to a well-known corner in the city's core. Here's Keenan and Cam on the space.
Yeah, so right now it's about 1,000 square feet, or like 1,200. Like our dispensaries, the other models probably will be in that 1,000 square feet, a little less. This is definitely going to be one of the biggest shops that we have. It's going to be, it's all about that customer experience and the educational piece around it. So there's still a lot of regulatory questions that we have in terms of like, how can we display the products? What's shelving going to look like? We know there's not going to be any on-site consumption, but being in Edmonton, like if there's liberal laws and people can just consume like 10 meters outside of the door as if it's a cigarette, that might be something that's going to be interesting. And the option of patio spaces or things like that down the road, it's going to be that's what we picked this location for.
Wow, it's an exciting spot. It's busy, so there'll be a lot of traffic in and out of here. We want people to come in and enjoy their experience, learn something, pick up a product, maybe hang around for a little bit. We should have a lot of people moving through this location.
When we recorded this episode, Token was waiting on the City of Edmonton to give them their development permit so they could build out their space. In May, the city's Urban Planning Committee voted in favor of a lottery system to choose who will get the development permit to sell pot. They find out soon if they're able to transform their chosen location, but unfortunately, this means more waiting for Token. Keenan is fairly confident that they'll get the permit to develop.
We've put in the application and we've gone over it and kind of dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. So it's really just a matter of the variances. So we've followed all the city rules in terms of separations from schools, hospitals, et cetera, but it's going to be our other guys putting locations in, and we go through that lotto system. So there is, I think we'll get through like the AGLC process. It's the business license, and hopefully that, that works out in our favor, but it's, we don't control that at the end of the day.
There's a chance that Token may not be able to develop their prime downtown location. Sometimes that's the luck of the draw, but once again, Token has had to be nimble.
So we as a business kind of focused on the small towns, and that was again like, our networks were out there in terms of like the lease spaces and landlords. So we've put them in Cold Lake, Morinville, Vermilion. Jamie's got the list. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but in Edmonton, we'll have one, maybe two. And then the rest are kind of northern Alberta small towns. And then that was because we had, a little bit, like some of them we had good relationships with the mayors and things like that.
Focus on smaller towns was strategic because there was a lot of uncertainty around the larger municipalities, the cities, about what their timeline for implementing policies for cannabis legalization would be. So there's a lot more certainty in these smaller towns. And I mean, if you think about, one liquor store in a town of 5,000 people often does a lot better than one of 6 liquor stores in a 2-block radius in a downtown core of a city. So I think there'll be a lot more predictable revenues in those small towns.
But while small towns have the opportunity to make tokens some good coin, they're helping shape those smaller communities too by employing more Albertans.
Wise, we've looked at, I think 10 employees a store or something like that, depending on like hours and like the regional, because like if we're going to be based out of here, someone's going to have to, man the shops in the smaller towns. For the small towns, in terms of changing, like we want to see cannabis have a positive effect on the small town, so we're going to work closely with them, and like we want people to look at a retail shop moving in as an opportunity, an alternative to liquor consumption. It's still like something social that they can do, but it's all about that comfort level. So we're trying to work closely with the cities to make sure that this is what we're looking at doing, and this is what we see as future opportunity. This is what we see as like investment in the city, et cetera, as we build out these spaces.
Token's goal is to keep up with rapidly changing consumer preferences, but it's going to be difficult. It's difficult because there's still a lot we don't know about the plant and its effects on the mass market. Here's Cam.
The cannabis legalization is like the biggest public policy experiment that we've seen in our lifetime, and it's made up of all these like discrete little experiments with individual consumers taking individual doses of cannabis. Every one of those is an opportunity to learn something new about how cannabis affects us and how our minds work ultimately. So yeah, it's a big uncontrolled clinical trial. So anybody who can actually like build some objective analysis around that will reap the benefits, and they'll be able to turn that into feed that into their product development pipeline and create more repeatable experiences for people. That's where you can monetize.
There's clearly a lot of interest and money being tossed around in this brand new industry. And that means economic change. So I asked Cam this very question. What is the overall economic benefit of cannabis legalization?
So I guess the first number in trying to figure out economic impact of legalization would be what's the size of the market. There's really good research done by StatsCan on a federal level, and actually just the recent Deloitte report put retail cannabis sales in Canada at about $7 billion a year, and then tax revenues on that will be shared 50-50 between the feds and the provinces, and it's 10% of those sales. So you can do the math on that. That's fairly simple. What proportion of that $7 billion will be in Alberta? I think Alberta is about 12% of the Canadian population. So I think that the Alberta retail cannabis business will be about $1 billion. That's higher than the proportion of $7 billion, but that's compared to a very similar market in Colorado. Colorado sits around $1 billion a year, and they're a very, very similar market, same population, 4 million people. But the economic benefits, spin-off benefits from employment, from development of all these retail locations, 300 retail locations doing lease improvements over the next 4 months, that's a huge economic impact just in itself. Not to mention the build-out of production facilities and export opportunities. I think export opportunities is the biggest long-term impact on economic impact that cannabis legalization will have on Alberta, and the businesses and government in Alberta are very supportive of that as a concept. Aurora is already exporting product to Germany, and the German market, they pay about 4 times what we pay for cannabis here. So creating value-added cannabis products in Alberta and sending them to global markets is a potential for a huge economic impact, like as big as the domestic.
Cannabis is transforming the province's retail and agriculture sectors in the province. Employment related to the production, retail, regulation, and transportation and warehousing industries should see a boost from this new industry taking shape. Construction and architectural contracts of the 300 dispensaries will guarantee work for Albertans and expand our economy too. It's also true that embracing the cannabis industry could have a profound effect on tourism to the country and to our province. However, there are still some questions around the social and health implications that may arise in the wake of legalization. While this may be the case, the economic benefits of embracing this new industry are real and will have long-lasting positive effects on Alberta's economy over time. We Are Alberta is a production of ATB Financial. This episode was written and produced by Tyler Butler, Adam Rosenhart, and me, Nick Ford. Our creative and digital team includes Tikina Gordy, Steve Moore, and Patrick Sawyer Bennett. Our theme music and all music on We Are Alberta is written and produced by the one, the only, Doug Hoyer. You can find more of Doug's music at doughoyer.bandcamp.com and on Spotify. Thanks to Keenan, Cam, and the rest of the Token team for letting us do this interview. If you want to see what Token is working on, or you want to order some of their bitters for your next cocktail, check out their website, tokenbitters.com. There you can also subscribe to their newsletter to see what's happening in the cannabis space. Keenan and Cam also want you to know that
That's the kind of guys we are. Like, we'd always kind of be like, you want to meet for a coffee or curious about the industry, give us a call. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, we should give a call out. Like, if there's people that are listening that are interested in getting involved in the industry, young people who have really innovative ideas,
or old people too.
Or old people, yeah. Sorry, I view this as this opportunity belongs to
like if my dad wants to call and talk about it.
Yeah. Teddy can definitely start a business. Yeah, I'm sorry, I shouldn't discriminate. But people can check out our website, tokennaturals.com, or even email us, info@tokennaturals.com. We'd love to hear from people that want to get involved in the industry but aren't really sure how.
And if you're interested in more economic news, you should subscribe to ATB's daily economic newsletter, The Owl. Visit atb.com/economics.